Hello and welcome back to Seconds Out. My name is Eamon Khan here with influencer boxing insider Donagh Corby. Donagh, how are you doing?
Fantastic game. And talking to you makes my day every time.
Flattery will get you nowhere in this business. You must know that better than me, Donagh. Donagh, just for the people watching, we've had you on the channel before, but in your own words, again, let the people know who you are and what you do.
Yep. So yeah, I'm Donagh Corby, sports, particularly boxing and MMA writer for Mirror Fighting. Been there for about 2 years. Previously of the Irish Daily Mirror and freelance around the place as well. So yeah, I have taken on this YouTube boxing thing as kind of my big beat, but I also cover regular professional boxing and UFC, Bellator, PFL, all that MMA stuff as well.
Let's jump into it then. The latest development with Jake Paul. We're a bit of a delay in terms of him announcing his opponent, and we see
Yeah.
why for his next fight. But the latest development, which you've been on top of, is this offer to Tommy Fury. Can you tell me the content of this offer, Dunner?
Yeah, so it appears from the I spoke to Jake super briefly earlier today, and that was the quote that's kind of out there and going around social media where he said, I even offered to go February 18th in Manchester. I'm exhausting every avenue or whatever it was that he said. Um, the issue is it appears to me, if I'm reading between the lines a little bit, because I didn't want to get into too much detail, that it seems as though there are two options for Tommy right now. There's a $2.5 million offer to fight in Saudi Arabia, 2.5 million US dollars. It's in the region of about 2.2 million Great British pounds. Be good for a new father, huh? In this cost of living crisis, be a good way to start. And then a considerably lower offer, obviously, as these things tend to go, to do it a week earlier in probably the AO Arena, I would imagine, in Manchester, which is available. There's sort of nothing going on between the 4th of February and the 19th there. So yeah, Jake has laid his cards out. He appears to have a great relationship with the Warrens, Frank Warren, and particularly they're really keen. Like, someone contacted me before we did the story to make sure that it's Frank and George Warren. They seem to be big on George Warren. They seem to be very keen on the work they've done with him. So yeah, so Jake seems to have a good relationship with Tommy's team. It's just Tommy himself and whether or not he wants to do the fight. Of course, he's going to become a father any day now, and that's. I mean, I know Molly May has spoken about how much time he spends away in training camp while she's pregnant, and I'm sure it'll be particularly difficult then when there's an actual baby, around, and she'll want as much help as she can get. So that could prove to be an issue. I would imagine. Haven't heard anything like that, but yeah, Jake's team are bullish on making this fight happen next month because they want to get started on this MMA thing.
You just mentioned the MMA thing. What's more likely here, Dunner? The Jake has his fight in MMA first or boxing? Where does it stand right
Oh,
now with?
he'll fight. I would think. I dare say he'll fight multiple times before this MMA thing happens. From what I understand, definitely he'll do one in February. It'll either be Tommy Fury or Mike Perry. And, Mike Perry is a considerably less interesting prospect than not just Tommy Fury, but any of Jake's last few opponents. I mean, when you go name value wise, you'd be back in 2020 by the time he last faced someone with as little and sort of like, for example, when we write stories, we say former Bellator champion Ben Askren, we say former UFC champion Tyron Woodley, legendary UFC champion Anderson Silva, Mike Perry. Never, I don't believe he was ever ranked in the top 15 in the UFC. He was always, a fan favorite and a big name, and he'll certainly help to promote in a big way, but not exactly the name you're looking for. He's 3-0 in bare knuckle boxing since leaving the UFC. Him and Jake have a story there. They fell out over a sparring issue. Jake uploaded a piece of footage that showed Mike saying, you kicked my rear in the sparring session. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens there. We've seen Jake versus the ex sparring partner before, right, with Hasim Rahman Jr. That didn't happen. So yeah, I think what they would like is to do this Tommy Fury fight, and I believe that their concern is with Saudi Arabia is that anything that involves multiple steps, like getting on a plane and arriving at a hotel and all of this stuff, and there's a lot of things that wouldn't be considered issues. Like, for example, when you talk about Fury and Usyk, or AJ and Usyk before that, AJ and Andy Ruiz Jr. before that, these things wouldn't be issues. Like, we kind of know Andy Ruiz is probably going to get on a plane and go to Saudi Arabia if he's offered all this money, right? The same with AJ, the same with Usyk, the same with Tyson Fury. Evidently, they're not so confident that Tommy will do that if they do this fight in Saudi Arabia this time around. And look, with good reason, he didn't show up to the 2 fights they had scheduled. He went to Wembley, doing all the promotion. He did that, and then he came to Dubai, and there was an issue there too. There was a weight issue. So they are rightly concerned about this thing, but they are bullish about getting Tommy Fury for some reason. I've asked them on and off the record about this, and I don't really ever get like a very satisfactory response what the kind of obsession with the Tommy Fury thing is. But I suppose that Jake has his mind set on beating a legitimate professional boxer. Tommy is 8-0, and it seems that that's the way he wants to go.
Any other alternatives to Tommy Fury standing there for Jake? You mentioned Perry there. There's an offer being sent out to Nate Diaz there too. Who stands as the alternatives for Jake's next fight?
So Jake will fight in February, from what I understand, and it will be one of either Tommy Fury or Mike Perry. They're really, really cutting it fine, as they did with the card in August. You remember that? Like, it was super late. I think it was into July by the time they got the deal over the line it was the middle of June when they got the deal over the line for Jake versus Tommy in August at Madison Square Garden. And then Tommy couldn't travel because of, an issue there that we don't have to get into. And I think that it appears very much like Jake has already begun the potential promotion for either fight, Tommy Fury or Mike Perry. And Tommy has done very little. Mike has done a lot to push this idea. Tommy has done essentially nothing over the last few days to keep this thing ticking over. So, and now Jake has started to sort of get the wheels in motion. We've talked to him, and he's accessible. He's more accessible than a lot of influencers that became boxers, but certainly not someone who I just send a message to and he replies all the time. So it's good to see that they're beginning the rollout of promotion for this now. And to answer your question, long story short, it will be one of Tommy Fury or Mike Perry in the middle or towards the end of February. Tommy
Fury has since responded now with his own offer back to Jake Paul. Don't know, what do you make of that offer from Tommy there?
Look, it's classic Fury fare, isn't it? Right? He's just taking a play out of his brother's book. Tyson did this a couple of months ago when he said he'd fight Anthony Joshua as long as nobody made any money, as long as you could walk into Wembley for free and it wasn't on pay-per-view. So Tommy, once again, just copying someone who's copying his brother again. But yeah, look, he's it's the thing is that what'll probably happen now in the time between when we record this and when this video even goes out, what'll happen is Jake will say, okay, I'm a multimillionaire, you're like still on the come up celebrity wise, okay, I'll do it for free in Manchester, let's go. There'll be another issue then. Oh, well, there'll be some whatever. I can't imagine what it would be, but time maybe, I don't know. Something else will come up. You have to play these situations out in your head. And yeah, like I said to you earlier on, I'd imagine, like I said to you early on, I would think that Tommy Fury signing a contract to fight Jake, proceeding to go through all the steps I listed out earlier, I don't see it happening. I see it breaking down at some point between signing the contract and let's say weigh-in. I see something arising if he's not already out of it, and this is like a public thing. Because I remember that was the thing, was when Tyson was fighting or was going to fight AJ last year, was quote unquote going to fight AJ. Tyson was talking about like deadlines and stuff, but then Eddie Hearn and George Warren were speaking after a deadline would pass. They would still be having conversations and the lawyers would still be passing things back and forth. So maybe this is a little public front from Tommy and he's trying to do something. It annoys me whenever anyone does the like, oh, I'm sick of Jake Paul talking shtick, because it's like he's selling the fight for you. Like Jake is the one with the 20 million followers and the multiple pay-per-view headliners. He's selling the fight for you, who's very famous, but hasn't proven your ticket selling or pay-per-viewing draw yet. So it's not for Jake's benefit that Jake's doing all of this stuff. I guess it is in part because he makes a lot of money from it, but it's for the opponent's benefit who's not really around there yet. I know that Jake hasn't really in a while fought someone who's not that big of a name. Like, Tyron Woodley had sold out arenas around the US in main events before he ever fought Jake. Anderson Silva, one of the biggest stars in MMA history. Ben Askren even was a big star in wrestling, wrestled at the Olympics, and clearly his fight with Jorge Masvidal was big, whether for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And I mean, all three of his UFC fights were pretty big. So Tommy, in terms of his record, not professionally, he's obviously got a good boxing record, better than Jake's. But in terms of his record as a big draw, he was 2-0 when he went into the Love Island Villa, came back to the comeback fight in kind of a smaller venue, and I believe that did okay. And then he was on a couple of undercards during the COVID era, and then he was on Jake's undercard in Cleveland. Then he didn't fight Jake twice, and he was on Tyson's undercard in Wembley. Hard to gauge how many of those people, if anyone on that undercard, it's hard to gauge how many people were at Wembley to watch, anyone who wasn't Tyson Fury, because it all went on sale before they even had an undercard. So yeah, he just it hasn't been proven yet that he's someone who sells a lot of tickets or pushes a lot of pay-per-views. That's not to say that he doesn't. It's just that he's young, right? He's 23 years old. Generally, when you're 23 years old, you're 8-0 and you haven't had that many amateur fights, you're not headlining pay-per-views. Or you're not even really headlining major cards. You'd be kind of a co-headliner maybe if you're very famous. And Tommy's done that, he's been in big fights. But yeah, he's this whole I'm sick of Jake talking stuff. It's like, well, Jake's talking for your benefit, Tommy, not for his own. He's already sold all the things. He made 45 million allegedly in 2021. He's all right, I think. So yeah, very strange.
Moving on to KSI and Dylan Danis. Interesting situation there where a lot of people who follow MMA were very much cautious about this fight, considering Dylan Danis's history and maybe current ongoings with him. But Danis has pulled out of the fight. We haven't heard his side there. But what's your feelings on that pullout from Danis? Don't know.
Look, Mams Taylor kind of said it all in that video on the Misfits channel. It sounded like this from the beginning when he first started. I mean, they started promoting it relatively early, right? End of November, middle of November, late November, for a January 14th date. That's a solid promotional run, 2 months. For someone as big as KSI, who could really sell out, the O2 or Wembley quite handily on his own. That was, a good solid promotional run, but he showed up in Texas and it was wild from the second he got there to the second he left. He was, between the coffee throw and the Anthony Taylor incident and, all these different things going on. And then he did this really kind of weird interview with the Misfits YouTube channel where he was almost speaking in like an Irish accent, which was kind of strange. And then, of course, he comes back to New York. He starts training, but he doesn't find himself a boxing gym. It appears that he was just calling up his friends who are boxers and saying, hey, do you want to train? And getting, people who he knows who are boxing coaches to hold pads for him, which is what he kind of said on Ariel Helwani's show. Very strange situation. It sounded like, well, I spoke to Peter Queally, who's a friend of his who is part of Conor McGregor's camp in SPG in Ireland. And it sounded like the door was kind of open for Dylan to just come to Ireland and train if he wanted to do that. And the plan, I believe, was once he had a team in place and all that, had he been prepared, that he would have, to acclimatize to the 5-hour time difference, he would have flown over here, I think this Monday, had all gone to plan. And he would have finished off his training camp in SPG with, his old friends. Maybe Conor would have made an appearance, possibly. Peter Queally certainly would have been there. He's in camp for a fight on February 26th in Bellator. So, yeah, Dylan it seems though from the get-go was not taking this particularly seriously, from when he showed up in Texas and was messing around all the way through to the whole promotion. It was all like he does this interview with Ariel Helwani, and the bit that nobody talks about that stuck out to me was he says, Ariel goes, "Is this pro or exhibition?" And he says, "Oh, I don't know." How would you not know that? It's like the first thing that you would see. It'd be like on the first page of your contract. You'd have to be deliberately not looking to see something like that. And he should also know, if he did like a second of research, that Misfits boxing cards are done in kind of a semi-sanctioned way where the PBA oversees them. They're not pro. They're really not exhibitions either. I guess I wouldn't say this because they are sanctioned by the PBA and they're very safe and they're very well-run events. Some could say unsanctioned. They're not unsanctioned. There's a body that does them. And it seems like this is obvious information that you would know. If I know it and you know it, then I would think that the guy fighting in the main event for supposedly a 7-figure purse, when all was said and done, would know that information as well. But yeah, then all of a sudden he didn't know about the rehydration clause. He didn't have a coach, didn't have a team. And so I believe, based on all the stuff that Dylan had said himself, what Mams was saying about him being underprepared.
The FaZe Temper steps in, which I believe then puts the kibosh, as it were, on this mystery opponent. I guess the mystery opponent doesn't get to appear on this card. But does the card stand as strong as it did without Danis? Don't know.
So first off, I believe, I could be wrong, and I don't want to misreport or say things that were off the record. I believe it's out there. I could be wrong on this, that the mystery opponent will still fight. And I think they'll have a mystery opponent. There might be 2 mysteries.
Okay.
I don't know what the plan is there, or maybe they'll announce who the mystery opponent is going to fight. I don't know, but I believe there will be an 8th fight on this card that will be announced in due course, or maybe won't be. But I could be wrong on that too. But to answer your question, no, it's not even close to as strong. Dylan Danis, love him or hate him, and a lot of people hate him. It brings an MMA audience into it, which is kind of essential in this thing, because boxing media don't really take this stuff seriously. I guess maybe as they shouldn't, right? Because there's a couple of fights on there that I would think, if you were a legitimate boxing journalist, you would run a mile from. And not KSI. I think KSI, has proven himself to be, solid at the level that he's at, and trains particularly hard with a lot of professionals. That being said, it's even of the replacements, because I know that people have been saying it from the start. I was saying it to people in Texas when I saw Danis around. I was saying to people, I think it would be wise to have a second choice, maybe on the undercard, who's ready to step up, which is obviously what they did. But even if you look at the undercard, Slim Albert, better fight, more interesting. Joe Fournier was announced as the backup opponent, and then the main event pulls out. Joe Fournier is not the backup opponent, so weird thing to announce. He had said it, and then Mams Taylor had confirmed it, I believe, with Boxing Social. So, it's all a bit strange. Of all of the people on the undercard, just from a tabloid journalist perspective, of all the people on the undercard who I look at as potential replacements, I look at 3. I look at Slim Albert, probably in this order. I look at Joe Fournier, Slim Albert, Anthony Taylor. Those 3 would be people who could step in and feasibly do the fight. There's Slim is arguably the best YouTube boxer. He could be as good as Jake. We don't know. He hasn't tested himself against a really high level of opposition. Maybe not as good as Jake. Maybe I'm being a bit facetious there. He could be. He probably could beat KSI, I would think, and would definitely give him a very good fight. There's no way KSI would handle Slim with ease or anything. Then you've got and he's also a great talker, brilliant talker. I can't get enough of Slim. Then you got Joe Fournier, who's obviously 9-0 as a professional. He's been ranked in the WBA. At some point, I believe he held some sort of a WBA trinket, an international title or something. And, he was talking about fighting like Callum Smith at one point, I remember. So that would be, that would have been massive. He's also, it appears, not particularly, not a particularly, big name or whatever, but good talker, would do a bit of the trash talk, and was in there with David A. Has the good record, and he really would be, for all intents and purposes, another legitimate boxer. Because, that whole Pineda thing, remember when KSI was going to fight him? That was the big selling point, was, hey, who fought a real boxer before Jake? Because this guy, and then he showed up and they went, okay, maybe we'll maybe we'll, brush that aside. But Joe Fournier is 9-0, right? So he would have been a very legitimate name to step in. And then, of course, Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor. I mean, he's not the biggest name, but there appears to be a very legitimate issue between him and KSI that bubbles. I mean, you look at KSI's social media, he's done more tweets slacking off Anthony Taylor than he has done about Dylan Danis or FaZe Temper, So there's a legitimate feud there. He's part of Jake's team. The way that Tommy Fury got to Jake was by beating Anthony Taylor. It would be, there's a storyline there that progresses this whole KSI comeback arc. And of course, I mean, you've covered enough of these events. He's the best on the mic. He's amazing and would have done all the media, would have been fantastic, and would have done the water throwing and the jumping up and down and the pushing it the way in and all that stuff. So, look, he's still going to be on the undercard against Idris Virgo, KSI's teammate. But yeah, of those three, I would have said they're better options than FaZe Temper, who is fine, more famous than any of those three, but definitely less interesting fight style wise and less interesting personality wise.
Second best anti-Taylor, maybe behind Sam Hyde. I guess it really shone in his single outing last year.
Retired Sam Hyde. Can you believe that? I talked to him recently. You know what's funny? I won't get into it too deep, but I've covered a lot of big fights over the last couple of years, being in mirror fighting. Over the Christmas break, I was socializing more than I usually would. The person people were asking me about at the pub was Sam Hyde. People were coming up to me and asking, "You interviewed Sam Hyde? Oh, the Candyman!" You would, like, multiples of people, like a lot of people. I get a couple of Conor McGregors here, a couple of little Deontay Wilders, maybe Anthony Joshua, something like that. But Jesus, Sam Hyde was the star of the show for the Irish fans, I guess, last year.
Indeed, he was. It was a pleasure for us to both speak to Sam last year. Well, I think I'm retiring that one for now. Don't know any further rumblings for fights in the influencer sphere that you maybe have caught wind of. The strong feeling online a few days ago back was KSI and Jake Paul would finally duke it out in the ring this year. Is that really that realistic this year?
Well, this whole PFL deal that Jake has signed, where he's going to join in an ownership capacity as well as having a backstage role, and then the big headline is he's going to fight in the cage a couple of times. That would seemingly put paid to that idea, because Jake would need a lot of work to be ready for a low-level MMA fighter, like a name you've never heard of, who the kind of guy, I was saying this, I was on another show the other day, and I said, the kind of guy that Dylan Danis would fight, like that kind of guy, Jake would need a whole lot of work for. So I think probably that would take him 6 months, and if he got a name of any description, he'd probably need 9 months. So he may fight. He's going to do this fight in February. Then he may start the MMA training. With all due respect to KSI, I don't think that. I think a little month and a half, 2 month camp would probably be enough for Jake to get that one done. The promotion would be more difficult than the training, I would think, for that one. So Jake could kind of start his MMA training, do a brief little boxing camp. It's going to be a tough year for Jake. Plus, he's got to promote Taylor Serrano too. If that happens, if Serrano wins in February against Erica Cruz, he's got to promote that. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough year for Jake. Tough for the year, 18 months after so much inactivity in 2022. But I guess that's what he likes. And yeah, I believe from the rumblings I'm hearing behind the scenes on both ends, sounds like the moves are being made in a positive way for Jake versus KSI.
The other thing is another megastar who'll be returning in an exhibition. We've seen in quite a few of these nowadays. Is Floyd Mayweather. Anti-Taylor is someone who's made no bones about wanting that fight, but he's going to be in the UK, it seems. Maybe something with Amir Khan can happen where they finally step into the ring. He didn't seem too interested in a Ricky Hatton return with him, but Floyd coming back for an exhibition here.
Yeah, so he wants to do an exhibition in the UK next month. These things don't take too long to put together. I don't believe that an opponent is signed up yet. I think that the rumor on social media, I haven't heard this from anyone behind the scenes, seems to be like an Isan Gibb is being lined up. I know that he was originally, if Global Titans had their way, they would have had an Isan Gibb and not Deji in November. Because obviously he was born in Saudi Arabia. He's English, but he was born in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, pretty close to that. So that would have been good. He wasn't available. He was fighting Austin McBroom at the time. And it appears that Gibb is getting big money offers. And I mean, there's no bigger money offer than Floyd Mayweather, right? So that would be that's one option. Also, the rumbling I'm hearing is that Floyd, I mean, he said this publicly. He's not in the business of taking damage, right? So like when Hatton fought Barrera, I mean, neither of them were taking damage, but that was like a little bit competitive and, back and forth. I don't think Floyd wants anything competitive and back and forth. I think he had enough with Logan Paul. I think he kind of took a step back after that one and was like, wait a second here. I've got to be very, very careful, because like he wasn't in any danger against Logan, but I'd say he probably took a bit more damage than he wanted. And I guess did he get cut or something against Edgy or something? So he's very keen on influencers. He doesn't want to fight Ricky, or he doesn't want to fight anyone. He doesn't want to do an exhibition with Ricky Hatton. Doesn't want to do an exhibition with who else did you name there? Amir Khan. He's no interest in that. A source threw out to me was what they would really love to do. They'd need a lot of time to promote it, and Floyd wouldn't do it. Is because they're old and they're not going to hit each other or whatever, and the weight classes don't matter. What this person's initial idea was when they came was they would love to do Carl Froch and Floyd Mayweather, but you're talking about like Froch in 2023. You're talking about a huge weight disparity between him and 155-pound Floyd Mayweather. I mean, like Froch at his lightest now, he wouldn't get anywhere near, even probably light heavyweight, would he?
He was at super middleweight his whole career, so he keeps
now
himself in good shape.
that.
However, but I doubt he'd be at super middle.
Yeah, so the likelihood that he gets down there is slim, but wouldn't that be amazing? Froch versus Mayweather, that'd be incredible. The rumblings I'm hearing are exhibition in the UK in February, then either Middle East or somewhere in America in April, which would be a different kind of promotion. It wouldn't be Global Titans necessarily. That would be February. Let's throw a Nissan Gibbs name out there. That's not what I'm hearing. And then, it seems that Mayweather's team were impressed by Anthony Taylor in Dubai, from what I've heard. I heard that after the press conference in London, the infamous press conference with John Fury and everything, I heard that what I was told was that someone from Team Mayweather asked Anthony Taylor, what's the lowest weight you can get to? Which is a good sign always, right? So I'm not sure what has transpired since then, but it does appear Anthony's gone on a little tour of talking about this thing. And, he's big on the law of attraction and, speaking things into existence, manifesting things. And I would absolutely love to see him in the ring with Floyd Mayweather. Wouldn't that be so funny? Mayweather and Anthony Taylor. Wouldn't that just be hysterical? And he's good enough that he could at least he could move around in such a way that Floyd could fake being competitive. It'd be a fun little move around. And gosh, the build-up would be hysterical. It'd be amazing.
Be a great fight, especially be a fun visual, especially if certain people appear in the corner of Anthony Taylor. But we'll leave that one there for now. Donagh, speaking of law of attractions, let's round this off and circle back to Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. Are you confident that this fight does happen now or not so?
I just did an article the other day before I heard about any of this stuff, where I was talking about the things we won't see in 2023. And I believe we may get as far as Tommy signing a contract. They may put a graphic out. They may tell us that there's a fight. Maybe I might even book flights to Saudi Arabia or to Manchester. I will believe Tommy Fury fighting Jake Paul. You know what? I won't even say I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when they're in the ring. I'll believe it when he does one press conference with him. If he does one launch press conference 6 weeks out, I'll say, okay, maybe it's worth booking the flight then. But I believe that Mike Perry's the kind of guy who would show up. I believe that obviously Jake has proven he's shown up to all of these things. I believe Hasim Rahman Jr. would have shown up had the commission allowed it, and he would have somehow, some way gotten down to whatever weight he was allowed to get to and taken the fine or whatever. And I just, the evidence doesn't seem to be there that Tommy Fury, well, like I say, there's a lot of steps that need to be taken to get to fight night when they're making the walks. They gotta, and it sounds like it sounds like I'm explaining this to like a baby. But you've got to, there's a lot of things that need to happen. So he needs to put pen to paper on a contract. He then needs to do a launch press conference in either London or Manchester. He then needs to get to fight week and get to the hotel unscathed. He then needs to do a press conference on fight week with Jake. By the way, he's never done a press conference with Jake. They've signed a fight 2 times. Never sat down at a desk and done the back and forth. which is strange. Needs to do a press conference with Jake, and obviously Tyson won't be available for any of that promotion because he's going to have the Usyk fight a couple of weeks later. So then he needs to weigh in, and that's been an issue in the past. He needs to not that he has an issue making weight, but there was an issue the last time his fight got canceled with Paul Bamba. So yeah, he needs to weigh in, and then he needs to get to fight night, get out of the dressing room, and make the walk. Do I believe that all of those steps are going to take place? I would be absolutely amazed, if I'm honest.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Final thing is, where can people see more of your work, and for the latest on the YouTuber sphere, social media influencer sphere?
Yeah, I would recommend they all follow at Mirror Fighting, of course, and then for me personally, Donagh Corby, DONAGHCORBY. There's an underscore at the end on Twitter. There's no underscore at the end on Instagram. Don't add me on Facebook. That'd be weird. TikTok, I have an account at Donagh Corby. I never use it. And yeah, I'm just out and about. I mean, you can follow me by texting me at my phone number, which is no, I'm not gonna give that out. But yeah, no, and I look forward to multiple boxing sparring sessions with you this year.